Mr. No, I want to go right to your testimony. In the middle of your testimony, you said actions that occurred at the Capitol on January 6, 2021 were repeated every night, and you emphasize every night, months on end in the Pacific Northwest. And then you define those actions. Antifa carried out nightly riots targeting federal, county, and private property. They developed a riot apparatus that included streams of funding for accommodation, travel, riot gear, and weapons. This all resulted in murder, hundreds of arson attacks, mass injuries, and mass property destruction. How many days in a row did all that take place in your hometown of Portland?
Consecutively, approximately 120 days.
120 days. So what people on Capitol Hill lived through one day, you and your neighbors and people in Portland, Oregon lived through for 120 days straight. Is that accurate?
That's correct, sir.
120 days straight. And yet I don't remember the Democrats condemning what was going on in Portland. That's the part. A little earlier, we had the chairwoman of the committee say that she abhors violence. But last summer, when the Attorney General of the United States, the chief law enforcement officer of this country, was in front of this committee and asked the Democrats, why won't you condemn the violence going on in Portland and other big cities? Complete silence from the Democrats. So, Mr. No, I don't know if you're Republican or Democrat. I don't know what your party affiliation is, if any. But what I do know is you're consistent. You're condemning all political violence. Is that right?
That's right, sir.
Whether it happened on January 6th or whether it happened in the summer of 2020, right?
That's right.
Whether it happened at the Capitol of the United States or whether it happens in your hometown, it is wrong. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you know firsthand what it's like, right? You've lived it. I think you said in the opening.
That's right.
Opening paragraph, you said, I know domestic terrorism well. Can you tell us what happened to you back in 2019?
Yes. I was hesitant to share this again, but in 2019, while working as a journalist covering one of the many protests turned riots that were involving Antifa and their other far-left allies, they targeted me and beat me severely. Mass militants punched me repeatedly on the head and the face, and I ended up in the hospital with a brain bleed, and I nearly died from that.
And they targeted you because...
Ever since then,
excuse me, I'm sorry. They targeted you...
Ever since then, they've continued to escalate death threats against me, and I've had to leave my home.
And they targeted you because you had the courage as a journalist to accurately portray what they were doing and what kind of tactics they engaged in and the harm and violence that they caused. Is that right?
That's what I believe, yes.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, look, we need consistency. We need to condemn all violence. Republicans condemn the violence that took place on the 6th. We condemn the violence that took place for 120 straight days in Portland when Antifa was laying siege to the federal building. While that was happening, we had our colleagues talk about they needed more unrest in the streets. At the very time unrest was happening in the streets, we had our colleagues say that the organization that tried to end your life and that for 120 days had violence happening every single day in Portland, that organization was a myth. Look, this is so important. I appreciate Mr. No's willingness to talk about the consistency that is needed from everyone, from both sides of the aisle, to address this problem and get violence out of our political process. Madam Chair, with that, I would yield back.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, no, excuse me. I got to yield to, I wanted to save time for the ranking member. I yield to the ranking member.
Thank you. Madam Chair, with that objection,